Real Rap Coalition podcast. Back at it again with another reaction video. Before I start, I want to say rest in peace and prayers to the victims, both deceased and injured, in Minneapolis. There was a shooting earlier today, and there was a few kids that ended up being, taken from us, and there were some children that were injured as well, and there were 2 or 3 elderly aged persons that were injured as well. Rest in peace to them. And Robert Westman, I don't give a fuck what the news is calling you or what you wanted to be called yourself before you went out like a bitch. Robert Westman is a fucking coward. And that's all I got to say about it. Fuck him. But yeah, man, let's get into this video. I came across this video earlier today. I went ahead and added it to my watch later, and I got some spare time, so I'm gonna go ahead and watch it, react to it, and see what's going on with it. Michael Jackson. There's been some talks and conversations here and there over the years of whether or not he had gang affiliations or gang ties, or if he was just cool with some gang members. You know what I'm saying? I thought it was interesting, so I thought I'd watch it. So let's see what's going on.
The other police and me, we talked, and he said, man, Michael Jackson want to do a video, and he want real gang members. And do you and some of your homies want to do it? I said, yeah.
You definitively said that Michael Jackson was a Crip.
I don't know if he was being serious, but you seemed serious when you said it.
I've always been curious about on Better on the Other Side, your tribute to Michael Jackson. You mentioned that MJ called you up and
try to squash the beef with me and 50.
Yeah.
No one ever made Michael Jackson check in. Not the Crips, not the Blood.
That's super dope if that happened. I don't know, man. Rappers be lying for clout. And I fuck with the game. So I'm not saying he is out of bias or anything yet. Or I'm not saying he not out of bias neither. I fuck with him. I fuck with his music. But I don't know how old this interview is. And niggas be lying for clout. Point blank period. Sometimes they do. I don't know. So, but yeah, let's continue.
Because both sides saw his intent. Michael Jackson's ties to the Crips and Bloods weren't rooted in crime or gang allegiance. They were about peace.
That's dope as fuck.
Crips and Bloods who wants to be in Michael's video. But Michael said, I'll get them, Bob. I'll get them.
By casting real gang members in Beat It and easing rival tensions, he earned rare respect.
Michael Jackson was a Crip. Like, he really was a Crip.
The rumors of deeper affiliations persist.
See, that's what I can't understand. What I don't like is when niggas don't have all of the information and then just say some shit. And I fuck with 85 South Show too, but I cannot stand when niggas just run with a narrative about something or somebody. I can't stand it. Like, there's no evidence that he was out here cripping, bro. He's from many. Where is he from? I forget where Michael Jackson is from. But he's not from a gang-affiliated place like that. At least I don't think. Let me make sure before I jump out the window. He was from Gary, Indiana, bro. Gary, Indiana. Let's see. Now, this isn't going to be according to when back then. I'm not even about to do all of that. But Gary, Indiana is not, shout out to y'all, it's not a tough place, bro. You don't hear about Gary, Indiana. The most famous person from Gary, Indiana is Michael Jackson. That's saying a lot because it's Michael Jackson. However, he might be the only famous nigga from Gary, Indiana. So don't I can't stand when niggas do that. All right.
no one ever made him check in. Both sides saw his intent. This video explores how MJ built that respect, the key moments, who backed him, and why he was never challenged. Discover the underrated influence Michael Jackson had beyond music. Chapter 1. Los Angeles Gangs, a Turf War. Between the late 1970s and early 2000s, Los Angeles became one of the most visible battlegrounds of gang-related violence in the United States. Two major street organizations dominated headlines and shaped the daily lives of countless residents, the Crips and the Bloods.
There's a war going on in South Central.
Here's another thing that irritates me about these videos. They always have, I don't know if this is a real person talking, this might be AI, I don't know. Why is it always the whitest voice talking about black struggles in these movies or in these videos, bro? Stop doing that. And yes, freedom of speech. Everybody can talk about whatever. However, at least fake a black voice or something. I don't know. Like it sounds weird and it rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know.
The Crips, initially formed in South Central Los Angeles in 1969 by Raymond Washington and later expanded by figures such as Stanley Tookie Williams, spread rapidly across Southern California. In response to their growing dominance and violent reputation, the Bloods emerged in the early 1970s as a
This is the problem. This is the problem. This is the problem. It started from the middle. It started from the middle. Anybody that knows anything about gangs, period, both the Bloods and the Crips, started not out of violence. They started out of protection against the police and police brutality. Gangs didn't start off violence and turf war and drugs and guns. No. Both Crip and Blood are acronyms. This says self-defense. This says the Crips originally formed to provide protection for their members against other street gangs and to address issues of white violence in the community. Halfway true. Halfway true. Because there wasn't a lot of gangs in the first place. There were neighborhoods. There were people that were communities. However, they weren't gangs. So stop. I can't remember. I can't find it because white people. So, but when you have time, if you care to, look up or do research on the original Bloods, Lane's Bloods, and the original Crips, original Gangster Disciples, and find out where they started from. Not where people think they started from, where they originally started from. There's videos all over YouTube about this stuff, of the origins of how it started. The main issue that these communities came together and put a name on their community is because of police and white violence, not black on black crime. Do not let that be any further promoted after you get the real information. Don't let it be any further promoted. Sometimes ignorance needs to be stomped out, not physically. However, it needs to be rapid abrupt halt on incorrect information being put out there, because that's how narratives like this get started.
Federation of smaller street gangs, rooted primarily in areas like Compton, Watts, and Inglewood.
These Crips and Bloods have been warring for 30-odd years. One of the longest running wars in the history of this.
By the 1980s, this rivalry had escalated into a citywide turf war. Violent confrontations between the two groups became a grim routine, with drive-by shootings, retaliatory killings, and open-air drug markets turning many neighborhoods into high-risk zones.
Bro, this is pissing me off. Like, bro, the Bloods and the Crips started in the 60s. They started in the late 60s. Super early 70s at the latest. Gun violence for black gangs didn't start like that until the late 80s, mid to late 80s. There was shootings here and there. But this drive-by thing that they talking about and everything, like, that's not how this stuff started. I'm sorry.
Especially for young black men, streets like Florence Avenue, Slauson Avenue, and Crenshaw Boulevard became known as both cultural landmarks and epicenters of gang conflict. The Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, facing rising homicide and assault rates, responded by forming specialized units such as CRASH, Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums. Though intended to suppress gang activity, these units were later criticized and eventually disbanded for using aggressive and, at times, unlawful tactics that worsened tensions between police and the community. By 1980,
they were disbanded, but the tactics were still used. Don't let that fool you. They were still stopping frisk in New York. They was doing it over in LA too. There was still curfew. There was still all of this stuff. So don't let that fool you. Sorry, just I have to always stop misinformation being put out.
1983, gang violence in Los Angeles had drawn national media attention. That same year, Michael Jackson, at just 24 years old, was ascending into global superstardom. His album Thriller, released in November 1982, had quickly dominated charts, radio waves, and television screens across America. Jackson, who spent his early years in Gary, Indiana, had long been aware of urban poverty and racial division. Now based in Los Angeles, he found himself surrounded by a very different city than the one portrayed on magazine covers. In early 1983, as Billie Jean and Beat It topped the charts, Jackson made a creative choice with unexpected cultural impact. For the music video of Beat It, directed by Bob Giraldi, Jackson approved the inclusion of several real street gang members and youth from local communities, alongside professional dancers and Broadway-trained actors. The casting was handled in part by Giraldi and choreographer Michael Peters, who were both committed to creating an authentic visual portrayal of street life. While Jackson never made a public statement directly linking the video to the Crips and Bloods rivalry, the decision to bring real gang-affiliated individuals into the video served as a rare moment of inclusion. The video's message centered on rejecting violence and choosing peace, a theme underscored by its story of rivalry.
Honestly, if not for the recognition, at least for people to recognize it, if that makes sense. To further break that down, I feel like it should have definitely been harped on and been said that, hey, this person is doing this. Not even recognition for that person, but for the act itself. That's a super fire act, bro. Like, that's a super fire thing to do, to bring real life gang culture on, not even gang culture, but real life gang members on this set and have them, like, he put money in their pocket. That's dope as fuck. These are people that they are accustomed to a whole nother lifestyle that he don't know about like that. And because he wanted to help, he reached out his hand. And I think that's dope as fuck.
Gang leaders who ultimately put down their weapons and walk away. Though it did not solve LA's gang crisis, the video offered a widely broadcast symbol of unity and nonviolence at a time when many Americans remained unaware or indifferent to the struggles of inner city neighborhoods. Beat It became one of the most iconic videos of the era, not only for its choreography and production, but for its message. By blending entertainment with real-life issues, Jackson helped bring visibility to a crisis that many preferred to ignore. It was a moment where pop culture briefly intersected with the realities of urban America and where music, film, and street life found a shared narrative. Chapter 2. Beat It, a Studio Peace Summit. Following the unprecedented global success of Thriller, released in November 1982, Michael Jackson set his sights on delivering not just hit records, but cultural statements. Among the standout tracks was Beat It, a genre-blending anthem that fused rock and pop with a clear anti-violence.
I remember this commercial, not like I was alive, but I'm pretty sure this commercial ran for a while, or they bought it back up. This was actually a Coca-Cola commercial. Yeah, this is a Coca-Cola commercial. There was a kid and he was impersonating Michael Jackson, and the neighborhood was like playing, dancing along and everything like that. And then MJ popped up at the end of it, and they did the whole branding thing or whatever, but I thought this was the
message. For the music video, Jackson envisioned something different, something real. Rather than hiring only professional dancers or actors, he wanted to involve individuals who understood the subject matter firsthand.
If I get them, would you film them? I said, absolutely, Michael. As long as there's enough cops there, I'll be fine.
Crazy.
Jackson brought on Bob Giraldi, a commercial director from Paterson, New Jersey, whose work was known for its urban edge. Giraldi's upbringing around East Coast street life informed his approach to the project, but it was Jackson's idea to include real gang-affiliated youth, many with ties to Los Angeles street life, that gave the shoot an unprecedented authenticity.
So he gets them. And so it's the first day of shooting, beat it. And it's in a warehouse in downtown, as history shows. It's in a warehouse in downtown East LA. Very tough.
Filming took place in March 1983 in Skid Row, downtown Los Angeles, especially around East 5th Street, a location known for its grit and vulnerability. The goal was not only realism, but resonance. Jackson and his team coordinated informally with local contacts to recruit individuals from various neighborhoods, some with affiliations to LA street gangs. The production budget reportedly reached $150,000, a considerable sum for a music video at the time. CBS Records initially refused to cover the cost, prompting Jackson to personally fund it. Despite the risks, the production moved forward. According to Bob Giraldi, tensions were palpable on set. Around 50 to 80 individuals with street ties were present, some watching, others participating. In interviews, Giraldi recalled a moment when hostility nearly broke out. Rather than escalating the situation or calling in security, Jackson reportedly asked for the music to be turned up and began dancing on set. The shift in energy was immediate, Giraldi said. The crowd, previously unsettled, became still. They stood like referees, he later described, neutral, watching, and quietly absorbing the moment. Whether mythologized or not, that turning point underscored Jackson's rare ability to command respect without force. The video's theme, that walking away from violence was stronger than giving in, carried extra weight in that setting. Jackson, deeply committed to community uplift, was not perceived as a celebrity intruding, but as someone using his platform for purpose. Some of the street-affiliated extras began to mingle with the dancers, not as choreographed participants, but as witnesses and contributors to the atmosphere. The line between actor and reality blurred. The video storyline, a confrontation that turns into a symbolic dance-off, mirrored the dynamic playing out behind the camera. For a few hours, traditional rivals stood side by side, part of a shared cultural moment. The final scene, a stylized knife fight that gives way to rhythmic movement, was infused with a tension and rawness that came from more than acting. It came from lived experience. When Beat It premiered on MTV on March 31st, 1983, it was more than just a chart-topping video. It was a visual statement that shone a light on inner-city struggles while offering an alternative vision. Bob Giraldi would later describe it as the most dangerous and most beautiful shoot of his career. For Jackson, the video became a form of activism, showing that art could briefly override division. While it did not end gang violence in Los Angeles, it created dialogue, earned respect from those involved, and stood as one of the few cultural moments where music brought sworn enemies into the same room without bloodshed.
It's crazy that when I say our, I'm talking about us, but it's crazy that our artists went from being the ones trying to invoke change to being the ones that were essentially part of the problem. And, you know, I'm guilty for ingesting said issue music. You know, there are music artists that they are simply painting a picture of what their life looked like growing up, currently looks like, whatever. And it's clearly not glorifying, however, just showing it from their perspective. Whereas there are other artists who shamelessly glorify it. They shamelessly glorify it. Like, let's just be honest about it. That's what it is. It's glorification. We went from people like Michael Jackson, and I understand that Michael Jackson is a huge bar to meet, or kind of an unfair comparison, because he is where he is, and I don't know. There hasn't really been since then. There hasn't really been somebody to reach that globally. probably most people would probably attempt to say Drake. However, I disagree just because of the widespread look or aura of Michael Jackson from start to his demise, you know. So I hate it, honestly. I hate that it's one of the things that comes with when greats pass away. Their works are recognized. Sometimes they attempt to be duplicated, but for the wrong reason, you know. And there are some people who are successful in that. I think the closest thing that comes to mind for this specific thing, you know, this specific form of activism, Kendrick Lamar. And some of my friends are going to say that I'm biased on this. However, the proof is there. So you take this, you know, him putting gang members in a big music video, right? Not Like Us is the same thing. The pop out that he did is the same thing. And this wasn't just a music video. He gave them not only a platform but to be seen, but also to be heard. Now, are some of them also part of the problem of that whole glorification thing? 100%. However, you can take somebody, you can give somebody exposure. What they do with that exposure is definitely on them. You know, the favor is still the favor in my eyes. So, but yeah.
The legacy of Beat It lies not just in its success, but in its courage to depict conflict truthfully and to invite even the most unlikely people into the healing power of performance. Chapter 3, Respect, Not Recruitment.
You definitively said that Michael Jackson was a Crip.
I don't know if he was being serious, but you seemed serious when you said it.
Was Michael Jackson ever a member of the Crips or any street gang? The answer is no. There is no police report, FBI file, court record, credible biography, or personal interview that confirms or even seriously suggests gang affiliation. Jackson was not involved in gang life, nor did he ever claim such ties. What set him apart wasn't street credibility in the traditional sense, it was his unmatched ability to earn respect through cultural influence, quiet outreach, and humanitarian acts. Throughout the 1980s and
I like quiet outreach. I like that term because a lot of times you have people that's doing their, you know, their activism or their outreach, and they're doing it publicly so that they can be seen doing it. And their motivation is not so it can be done. If you really want to make a change, do it with the camera off. And I can understand that some stuff does need to be shown for sure. You know, things that certain individuals do definitely does need to be shown. The peace walks that were in direct response to the pop out. Sorry, I'm making mention of Kendrick Lamar again. But the peace walks that were done by both the Crips and the Bloods in LA right after, in response to the pop out and in response to Not Like Us and that whole surge, that type of stuff needs to be televised. Because one, gangs already have a bad rep, in which is well deserved. However, gangs already have a bad rep. It needs to be shown so that other people can see that it's being done. Because Bloods and Crips aren't only beefing, and other Crip sets are beefing with Crip sets, and other Blood sets are beefing with Blood sets. The Mexican gangs and black gangs are beefing continuously for decades now over in LA. That's not just in LA. That's in New York. That's in Chicago, where it's the GDs and the BDs. That's in the South. That's in the everywhere in the Midwest. That goes on throughout the entire country. Now, there's a spectrum to it where it's either really, really bad or not as bad. However, gang violence is gang violence. Down in Florida, they're dealing with a surge of gang violence down there as well. It's not Bloods and Crips, but it's still gangs. and these are mostly African American gangs. So the peace walks and the toy drives and the peace treaties and all of these things that's going on over there, they definitely need recognition, but for the act itself, not the person doing it. And if it's for a person, it needs to be a collective of people so that it can be shown that it's possible. That's my take on that.
1990s, Jackson used his platform to reach young people in underserved, violence-affected neighborhoods. This included inviting youth, sometimes from gang-heavy areas, to attend his concerts, offering VIP access, backstage passes, transportation, and signed memorabilia. Many of these efforts were not widely publicized, but they were well documented through fan reports, community stories, and local press coverage. He believed in music not just as performance, but as a bridge to foster unity in communities divided by poverty, race, and violence. Over the years, Jackson's posture toward gang culture became the subject of folklore and comedy, particularly in hip-hop and social media circles. Comedians like DC Young Fly, Carlos Miller, and Chico Bean from the 85th South Show have joked about Jack.
Yeah, there it is. That's AI. It's called the 85 South Show. That's AI talking. Okay, cool, whatever.
And possibly being a Crip, referencing photos where he wore navy or royal blue outfits. These routines were always delivered with comedic intent, never as claims of fact. On platforms like YouTube and TikTok, fan-made compilations.
All right, I take back what I said before. I didn't even look at it in that lens, because they are putting on a comedy show. However, it's just certain things that you kind of have to be sensitive about. You just kind of have to. It can take on legs and become something that it shouldn't be. But I get it.
Playfully explore this theme, often exaggerating Jackson's fashion choices for humor. Even veteran rapper DJ Quick once remarked half-jokingly that Michael Jackson had Crip energy, attributing it to his calm presence, stylish precision, and silent confidence. These comments were made with admiration and humor, not as literal assertions. Jackson's cool demeanor, unmatched global influence, and non-confrontational presence made him feel untouchable, but never because of gang ties.
Look at Michael Jackson. He got all these gangbangers behind him, and they don't f with him.
A more grounded reference comes from the late Eazy-E of NWA, who recalled encountering Jackson backstage in Detroit around 1989. In interviews and published biographies, Eazy-E acknowledged that Jackson never had to check in, a term in gang culture that refers to announcing yourself to local sets for safe movement. Jackson's mere presence was respected. His aura, artistry, and integrity granted him a pass that transcended the rules others were bound by. The truth is clear. Michael Jackson was never affiliated with gangs. No official documentation, arrest history, or credible testimony ever links him to the Crips, Bloods, or any other street organization. Yet in a city like Los Angeles, where alliances were often defined by color and code, Jackson entered and exited even the most sensitive environments without resistance. Not because he flashed signs or claimed descent, but because his music, character, and message were enough. His style may have inspired playful speculation, but the respect he earned was real, and it was built not on affiliation, but on impact.
I think that's super dope, and there needs to be more people like that, because I can understand growing up there and being close to it, having family members and having friends and, you know, certain things like that. But there are people that they grow up and that's not their life. They grow up, that's not their life, and they go over to LA and they check in. And I'm not saying don't check in to be tough. If your presence promotes positivity, you don't have to worry about that. J. Cole said in one of his songs, he said something like, I move around with no security. And there's been people that spot J. Cole, he just riding down the street on a bike, on a bicycle, just chilling. There are people that exist that they don't have to check in, they don't have to create these ties or subject themselves to getting extorted or, you know, just different stuff like that. And they move around just fine. You know, so it's possible if that's what you want to do. But if you weak, because that's a lot of times I feel like that's what it is. It's being weak. It's either being weak or it's wanting to pay your way. Because that's not respect. You're not paying for respect. You paying to not get your ass whooped. You paying to not get killed. You know, and though both of those things are a possibility, I still feel like it's possible that if you conduct yourself in a certain way and don't promote the life that's not yours and don't call for aggressive attention to yourself, it's very much possible to move around in safety as being these celebrities and being these musical artists and be untouched, as Michael Jackson did. And you don't have to have Michael Jackson's status to do that.
Chapter 4. When industry meets street tactics. Michael Jackson wasn't only respected in urban communities, he also claimed significant influence in the global music business. In August 1985, Jackson purchased ATV Music Publishing for approximately $47 to $47.5 million, acquiring rights to about 4,000 songs, including 251 Beatles tracks like Hey Jude, Yesterday, and Let It Be. This deal,
just so y'all know, that's what got him killed. For people that didn't know, he was making very wise business decisions that was gaining him more and more traction and influence and property. That's what got him killed. It's the same thing with Prince.
Deal was orchestrated by his lawyer, John Branca, and ultimately made him one of the top music rights holders in the world. A decade later, in 1995, Jackson sold a 50% stake in ATV to Sony, creating the joint venture Sony ATV.
I'm sorry, to further clarify that was just one of the first things that led to what happened. Yes, I understand that he didn't pass until, what was it, 09, 08, something like that. I understand he didn't pass until then. However, he was continuously making those type of moves. And I'm sure it's going to explain that. But that's essentially what got him killed.
Music Publishing, a move widely praised as savvy and transformational. Fast forward to May 2007, Sony ATV, still 50% owned by Jackson, acquired Famous Music LLC from Viacom for roughly $370 million. The catalog included over 125,000 songs, featuring artists like Eminem, Beck, Shakira, and Bjork, notably including some of Eminem's biggest hits.
Stevie Wonder said that he was piling on and how really rude it was for someone who made his money from the community, as Eminem has, to now diss the community.
I've never met Mr. Eminem, and
Mr. Eminem is hilarious. But go ahead.
To have him, I've always admired him, and to have him do something like that.
Here's the twist. In 2004, Eminem's music video for Just Lose It mocked Jackson, referencing his Pepsi accident and facial changes.
Pepsi. Sorry. Pepsi was the commercial, not Coke. Maybe it was Coke. I don't know.
Jackson chose not to sue. Instead, in 2007, his stake in Sony ATV meant he indirectly owned part of Eminem's catalog.
Yep.
As Snopes confirms, Jackson gained partial ownership through the Sony ATV deal, not a full acquisition. Industry insiders have since described it as one of the most strategic countermoves in music history, transforming offense into influence. As one source put it, everyone said Eminem couldn't cross Michael. Then MJ literally bought a piece of him. Though this exact quote appears in journalistic retellings, it reflects a broader sentiment.
Exactly. This was not, oh, you dissed me, I'm gonna buy your shit. No, that's not what happened. Eminem's music was a part of an entity, and that entity was purchased by Michael Jackson. This was not a direct response to him dissing him. People like to try to put out there to give MJ more props, in which he deserves all the props. However, just again, narratives being being twisted and turned for either comedic or out of hate for certain people, because there's been certain people that don't fuck with Eminem, don't fuck with what he did as far as with Michael Jackson and with Madonna and all these other people that he used to troll, and in which that's what Eminem was. Eminem was a troll. He meant everything he said, but it was shock value shit. It was either comedic or sometimes he actually meant, or I'll say he meant what he said, not to hurt, simply just speaking his mind.
On Reddit and in outlets like Boss Hunting. This chapter of Jackson's career caught attention not just in boardrooms but on the streets. Gangs recognized that MJ could maneuver corporate power as adeptly as he did cultural influence, and that kind of respect transcends intimidation. Chapter 5. Gangs, Culture, and Recognition. Street legends from the 1990s like Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G. revered Michael Jackson's cultural impact. Tupac sampled MJ's vocals and frequently spoke of Thriller and Bad as benchmarks in his music. Biggie, too, regularly name-checked Jackson in his lyrics, framing him as a cultural staple in hip-hop circles. But this admiration extended beyond music. Street crews took note of Jackson's business savvy, too. When he emerged victorious in corporate rings, it amplified his cultural power. If MJ could outmaneuver industry elites on spreadsheets rather than with violence, that spoke volumes in neighborhoods where escape was rarely peaceful. Crips and Bloods around Los Angeles noticed too. Jackson busted dozens of gang-affiliated youth for his Beat It Shoot, and later distributed food, concert tickets, and signed gear. He didn't rally crowds with threats. He attracted them through generosity and symbol. In zones marked by turf lines and distrust, his actions were seen as gestures of respect and uplift. It became clear. Influence, not intimidation, earned authenticity. Chapter 6. He never checked in, and here's why. In gang culture, anyone entering rival territory usually must check in, wear colors, acknowledge power, or gain approval. But Michael Jackson never did. Why not? 1. Jackson never claimed gang allegiance or flaunted colors. His goal was always unity, never division. He was all about intentional peace. 2. He traveled with a disciplined entourage and kept public entry points secure. Circumstances he managed, minimizing risk. 3. Previous actions like busing in youth or staging community benefiting events sent proof. 4. His fame and message transcended fanfare. He was viewed seriously amid entertainment and humanity. The result, Crips and Bloods paused when he arrived. No initiation needed, no turf battle begun. Instead, they observed. They maintained order. When the cameras rolled, rival sets were side by side, captured, collaborating on film. The shoot represented a powerful first moment, official production, real rivals, one shared cultural moment. Trust, not violence, led the way. Chapter 7. Networks that echo beyond gangs. Michael Jackson's influence wasn't split, it was holistic. On Wall Street, he was a mogul. On Crenshaw Boulevard, he was a unifier. In business, his 50% stake in Sony ATV reshaped global music publishing. This strategic acquisition granted him partial ownership of thousands of influential songs, including rights to the Beatles' catalog. The deal, arranged by attorney John Branca in 1995, merged Jackson's ATV holdings with Sony's catalog, creating a powerhouse that reflected Jackson's vision beyond music charts. He operated not just as an artist, but as a business architect. In 2007, Sony ATV, still half-owned by Jackson at the time, acquired Famous Music LLC from Viacom for approximately $370 million. This brought in rights to songs by Eminem, Shakira, and Beck, expanding Jackson's reach into modern music portfolios. In February 1997, during a history tour stop in Hawaii, Jackson arranged for undeserved youth and military families to attend his show. That same spirit was evident in Japan, where he visited Camp Zama to meet with children of American service members and engaged warmly with fans at Tokyo Disneyland. On August 29, 1993, he celebrated his 35th birthday by inviting 100 inner-city children to Neverland Ranch for a day of fun, food, and gifts. For street communities, these acts reflected the same values behind Beat It. The novelty wasn't that a superstar showed up, it was that Jackson gave back quietly and consistently. To neighborhoods scarred by disappointment, he embodied sincerity without spectacle. He connected executive suites and inner-city blocks with equal care. He showed that creative influence could produce tangible change. Resonance with both worlds required more than talent or visibility. It required consistent presence and personal integrity. Chapter 8: Fan Theories and Street Legends.
Michael Jackson was a Crip, like he really was a Crip.
On TikTok and Instagram, comedic memes about MJ being a Crip circulate daily. DJs and rappers like DJ Quick joke about MJ having Crip energy. Clips show Jackson in blue outfits. Fan theories tease that he wore colors on purpose. But researched history tells a different story. There are 0 gang records, no criminal affiliations, and no insider verification. His public persona, interviews, and legal backgrounds offer no links to street sets. Yet the rumors persist, and not by mistake. They thrive because of what he achieved. He entered contested zones, walked with adversaries, and left respected without membership, violence, or lies. He appeared in spaces where few high-profile figures were welcome, navigating them with calm, respect, and consistency. In doing so, he became a figure of quiet significance not just in global pop culture, but in local memory, where genuine intent and visible impact often leave the deepest impression. Michael Jackson didn't check in with Crips or Bloods because he first checked into humanity. He stood as a unifier, bridging divides with art, presence, and vision. He didn't need weapons or membership. He used music, peace, and generosity. In March 1983, he brought together dozens of rival street members on a single set. 15 years later, when Eminem mocked him, Jackson responded by owning a stake in his publishing. All
Bad narrative spreading. Stop saying that shit.
Without lawsuits. He earned respect from gangs, artists, executives, and fans alike. Jackson never joined a set. He joined a purpose. When no one forced him to check in, he did it by checking himself in with integrity, respect, and purpose. That's influence redefined for an entire world to watch.
That's dope. That's hella dope. That was dope. Again, there was stuff here and there that I didn't necessarily agree with. Certain points of information that are skewed. However, I think it was a pretty good piece. Yeah. From what I'll take this. No, I don't necessarily take nothing from it. It just furthers my theory on it's very much possible to move around as an artist and not portray yourself as somebody you're not, and not have to surround yourself with people who don't reflect what you actually want to be, what you truly want to be. Now, if your intentions is to portray a thug, portray a gang member, portray a life that's not yours or a life that you've never had, then you're going to get what come with that, i.e. Tekashi 6ix9ine. He got what he paid for. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's all. That's all I got. Dope video. Real Rap Coalition podcast. I'm out this over.